Hello students, it's Crazy Hair Day! In this lesson, you'll use Inkscape to automatically trace a path onto a bitmap image. Using the path that's created, you'll add a variety of colors and effects to different copies of the traced path. Your first step will be to add a color background so that the image variation will stand out better. There are images for you to use in the Section 4 folder. But if you have an image that you'd like to use instead, copy it to the Section 4 folder, paste it, save it, before starting this project. If you're choosing your own image to use, here are some suggestions about the type of image that will work best. Simple images focusing on a single subject with sharp edges. Line drawings as opposed to photographs. Images that use solid rather than broken or implied lines for their outlines and contour lines. Open and set up Inkscape. Y'all know how to do that. At least I think you do. On my computer, I just do a quick little search for it and it pops up and I hit enter and there it is. And the first thing we're going to do is save as. I'm just going to create a new folder and I'm going to call that Variety. Double click in there. And remember how you name your files always. Your first and last name comes first. And then the name of the artwork, Variety. This is an Inkscape SVG file. Click Save. And then your file name shows up at the top of your project. The next thing is to go to your File menu and go to Document Properties. In your Document Properties box, you're going to change from Portrait mode to Landscape mode. And it automatically makes that change. And then just close that box out. If your Layers menu does not pop up automatically, go to the Layer menu at the top and scroll all the way down to the bottom and click Layers. Okay, I already have a layer. I'm going to right click and rename that background and hit enter so that it saves the name. And then hit your plus to create a new layer and you're going to call this Bitmap and hit enter and hit your plus one more time. And this one you will call Traced. And hit enter. And now we're all set up. Do you remember what number to make this to fit into your window? 5. Click Save. Next, let's make a background. So click on your background layer and get your rectangle tool and drag from the top left all the way down to the bottom right. If it does not fill the entire canvas, just grab the corner and bring it the rest of the way down. You can also use your selection tool to resize it as needed so that it is filling the entire canvas. Good job. Now let's pick a color. I'm going to pick a sky color. So I'm going with something like that. You just have to click on the color on the palette at the bottom. Perfect. Save. And I'm pretty sure we're done working in the background layer, so I'm gonna lock mine, because you know, if you don't lock it, you might accidentally end up doing work in it. That's no fun. But I was wrong. I just went to the next step and it turns out we're going to make a gradient. So unlock your background and your gradient tool is down at the bottom. If it's not showing up, there's this little arrow here for any tools that aren't able to fit. look for it there. But this right here is your gradient tool. So let's see if I hover it over it. Yeah, create and edit gradients, it says. So do you remember how to use this tool? We used this in our Digital Arts 1 review. So this is where you're going to just, I think how they did it on theirs is they clicked the corner. Oh, look at that. Haha. I have to click save a couple hundred times before my gradient tool will work for me. File, save. There's my gradient tool. Click and drag. Okay, and you can make that gradient come all the way out as far as you want it, whatever you're happy with. This is kind of what they had done. And then remember, you can also double click on that to create a stop. And it was saying to click on this again. I'm just going to follow their directions and see what they do. And go to your object, fill and stroke box, or if you had it over here, you could have just clicked right there to maximize that dialogue, or that, they're called docks. Maximize that dock. Okay, so now I can pick a color, whichever one of those that I have selected. I can pick color for that, and you'll notice that it's changing. I just love the color wheel. That's my favorite. So I might have to go to a yellow hue over in this corner, and of course you change this inside because you've got shades and tints. So getting more of a pure hue going that way. And then I'm going to go ahead and click this one here, and I'm bringing this guy over to make that a more intense. I might have to go, oopsie. I have to click save, hold on. Come on now. Oh, I'll just click in here. There we go. Now I have control of it. Oh, I just think that looks lovely. And then I can go down here and click on this one, and I can change that to whatever I want. And I'm going to do purple, and you know what? Nothing's happening there. So I'm going to double click, and I'm going to create a new handle, and I'm hoping, oh, it's not wanting to give me a handle. Oh, you know why? Look, my A is all the way at the end. My opacity. Bam, there you go. Can't fool Mrs. Dro. Okay, so however you want that. And then, of course, I think I can move that line up. That's nice. I can move this, but that looks weird. I'm going to have to delete this little dude. Just hit the delete key. It'll go away. Let's see if I can get this one back. Now that I know what my problem was, it was just my opacity needed to be increased. That's what I was really going for. All right, perfect. It's a beautiful day here at UTVA. Look at that sky. Okay, I'm going to click my select and just click off of the canvas so that nothing is selected. And save. Go back to my layers, and I'm going to lock my layer now. Woohoo! Okay, let's import our bitmap. So click to the bitmap layer and go File, Import. And then you have to go to your resources. Where are they? Here they are. It says to go into the Section 4 folder and choose an image. This is the image that we're going to be using, me and all of my parasites. I don't know why I said we. You can use whichever image you want, of course. Always embed, okay, and then click OK. And hit the number 5. I'm going to click here, hit 5. I don't know if that's working. I'm going to click save, and now I'm going to try hitting 5. Oh, see, something weird's happening over here. I've got to somehow get myself somewhere where I can click 5. Or, never mind. If 5's not working for you, just go View, Zoom, woohoo, Page. Okay, now I can see my whole page. Grab that bitmap image and bring it up to the top left-hand corner. I don't know. Doesn't have to snap. Remember, to get rid of snapping, you can hit Shift 5, is it? Let's find out if it works. Let's see if Shift 5. Yep, now it's not snapping anymore. Now I can move it wherever I want. Shift 5 to stop that snap. Woohoo! All right. The Trace Bitmap command attempts to automatically trace the edges of a bitmap image using several different techniques. Let us learn about a few of these techniques. Brightness cutoff is a tracing technique that uses the brightness of the pixels in a bitmap image to trace lines and areas. Inkscape defines brightness as the sum of the red, green, and blue values for a pixel. A path is drawn for all of the pixels that have a brightness lower than the threshold setting. Threshold is another word for an edge between one thing and another. The threshold setting goes from 0.0 to 1.0. If the threshold setting is 0, Inkscape won't trace any part of the image because there won't be any pixels darker than 0. If the threshold setting is 1, Inkscape will draw a solid block of black because all of the bitmap's pixels will be darker than 1. This technique works best for images that have strong value contrasts. Edge detection is a tracing technique that uses the difference in the brightness between pixels that are next to each other to trace lines. When the difference in brightness is higher than the threshold setting, Inkscape will trace a path. In other words, if you subtracted the brightness of one pixel from the brightness of the pixel next to it, and the subtracted number was higher than the threshold, Inkscape would draw a line. This technique works best for black and white line drawings, or color drawings with lines much darker than the other colors. Color quantization uses changes in color between pixels that are next to each other to traced lines. The colors field determines the number of colors Inkscape will use to trace the image. Then it simplifies versions of the bitmap's colors to draw the traced lines. The colors field has a range from 2 to 64. The lower the number, the simpler the traced image will be. The higher the number, the more details of the image will be traced. This technique usually makes more abstract looking traced images. It works best when the traced image doesn't need to match the bitmap as closely. Invert image is an option that traces the opposite of what would normally be traced. If you used edge detection to trace the lines of an image, inverting the image would trace the space in between the lines it would normally trace. The trace would be made up of the shapes of the spaces between where the lines would be traced without invert image selected. You'd use this if you wanted to trace an image's shapes rather than its lines. Let's get started. First, select the bitmap image, then go to the Path menu and trace bitmap. Excellent. In the Trace Bitmap dialog box, click Brightness Cutoff to select it. Here's a tip. You're using this to trace the blocks of color in your image instead of the lines. in the brightness cutoff threshold field, change that to 0.5. I missed 0.5. 0.5. You can also delete to get there. There it is. 0.5. How do you say that? 5/10. Click the update button to preview the trace. Hey, that looks good. Do you like the way it looks? If not, you can go back and use a different threshold value between 0.001 or 0.999, anything under 1. So I'm going to go up to 6 and just see what that looks like. And then once you're satisfied with how it looks, go ahead and click OK. Hey, that looks really nice. And since this bitmap image has a white background, we can clearly see our trace. However, if whatever it was that you were tracing had some black in the background, as you can imagine, you would not really be able to see all of the contours of your traced image if there were a black background. So that's something to think about if you chose something that has a black background. Close the Trace Bitmap dialog box. And if you did have a black background, you can go ahead and go to the Fill and Stroke box. And I believe you can change, right now it's on black, you can see, you could change your, there you go. You gotta bring that little, if it's over in the corner, that means that it's pure shade, and you've gotta bring it over more towards your hue end of the color wheel. If you're using a color wheel, you can use the RGB or these other ones too. My favorite's the color wheel, just because you can play around with it and see what you're doing. And you know, it's Spirit Week, so I'm of course gonna have to go with UTVA colors today. Yes. Let's see. Ooh, look at that. My happy little fish. All right, so let's go ahead and compare our trace to the bitmap. So just grab that and pull it over. Oh, so pretty. So if you're not liking how yours is looking, you might have to delete this and go back and start all over. Just rewind the video. Do it again. Okay, so open up your layers, and you're going to make sure that you have your traced image selected, and you're going to edit, cut. You could do Control X too. Okay, and we're going to paste that to the traced layer. So select your traced layer and do Edit, Paste in Place. Paste in place. Boom. Okay, so now it's in the traced layer. And because we did paste in place, it's in the exact same spot where it was before. Let's go ahead and hide and lock the bitmap layer. All right, now we're going to align our traced image. So we're going to the Object menu, and we're going to select all the way at the bottom, Align and Distribute. And I better press Save at some point. And look at that fancy box that pops up. Okay, in the Align and Distribute box, you're going to look for the Align Relative to and select Page. And then you're going to, if you hover your cursor, you get the names of these, but I think, you know, the picture does better. But you're going to be aligning to the left edge. Boom. Snap. The traced images, left edge lines with the left edge of the page. Next, click the Align Top Edges. The traced images, top edge lines with the top edge of the page. I'm going to save and then click the Edit menu. We're going to clone this image and we're going to create tiled clones. Clone. We've done this before. Create tiled clones. And look at this, we got that dialog box again. All right, make sure the symmetry tab is selected and that this is P1, simple translation. If it's not, you could change it. And then for your rows and columns, you're going to do 2 by 3. And click Create. Voila. The Unlink Clone command separates clones from their original image. When clones are created from an image, changes made to the original image are made to all of the clones as well. For times when you want to make changes to the original image without affecting the clones, the Unlink Clone command will make each clone its own separate image. You'll unlink the clones next. So if there's any changes right now before you unlink them that you want to make in terms of the color, size, or shape, you can go ahead and do that now. Next, you're going to select all of the clones by hitting Control A. Or you could always do Edit, should be a Select All. In the Edit menu, find Clone and Unlink. Each of the clones becomes a separate object. Now changes made to the original image won't change the other images. However, if you wanted to make changes to all of them at one time, you still could by hitting Control A to select them all. And any changes at that point that you make to one, you could make to them all. For example, if I want to make them all fit on the same page together, I can do that still. Drop shadows are a visual effect that adds a shadow to an object. They give the illusion of depth and make an object look like it's popping out toward the viewer. Inkscape has a drop shadow filter effect that uses 4 different settings to change the look of the drop shadow. Blur radius controls how large the drop shadow is. Opacity controls how dark the drop shadow is. Horizontal offset controls how far right or left the shadow is. Positive numbers move it right and negative numbers move it left. Vertical offset controls how far up or down the shadow is. Positive numbers move it up and negative numbers move it down. You'll add a drop shadow to the traced image next. So let's make sure that all of our images are selected. So Control A or Edit, Select All. And in your Filters menu, you are going to look for Shadows and Glows and select Drop Shadow. And there's that dialog box. Click on your live preview so that you can see what it's going to look like. And you can adjust your blur radius. And it won't go lower than 0, so. Woo, that's pretty intense. That preview just finally kicked in. Okay, so get it where you like it. And you know what? There isn't an opacity. We have a different version. This is our opacity here, okay? So you'll have to go to blur color. You could actually, this is pretty cool. They didn't have this in the older version of Inkscape. You could change from a black shadow and you can swivel that around and make that shadow any color that you want it. Might take a minute for that to show up in the preview. And I don't know if it will show up in the preview. And then the opacity slider is here. And I'm not getting a preview out of it, and that could be because I'm making a video and sometimes things slow down. I don't know if you're getting, I'm gonna click save. Yeah, I can't even click save. So it's my RAM. It's trying to catch up. Yeah, I'm a little bit frozen right now. So that's, if you freeze up, sometimes if you just wait, you know, it's processing. I just made a lot of changes. It's processing. Give it a minute. Otherwise, I might have to click close if it's not liking it. I'm going to try that again. All right, filters, shadows and glows, drop shadow. Try not to intensify. Try not to do too much. Oh, it's not liking me right now at all. Click save. That might help. Okay, so now it has applied those color settings that I had put on it. And of course, you know, maybe I'm regretting them a little bit and I want to move that a little further into the black zone over there. And I don't know how long it's going to take for that to show up. I can also adjust my horizontal offset. I'm a little scared to do that right now. I'm going to close the box again like I did before and save. And then this is my way of working around the RAM issues that I'm having. Okay, get that live preview. All right, yes, and now it's taken that subtle adjustment that I made in the color. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to change this horizontal offset or not, but I'll give it a try. Oh, yes, I can. Good. I don't know how much it's going to like making these changes. I think it looks pretty good when it's closer. You can also adjust the vertical offset. That's fun. Okay. When you're happy with how it looks, I might just have to go and increase my opacity just a bit and make the shadow a little bit darker. Go ahead and click apply. Mine froze up and I'm just clicking save a little bit to free up my RAM. Okay, so there's my drop shadow. Pretty intense. And I'm going to click close. Okay, we're going to deselect everything. There's two different ways to do that. You can go up to the edit menu and deselect here, or you can just click somewhere outside of the selection area. Ooh, look at how I've got a funny little square right there. That's my offset. I don't like that. I'm gonna have to change that. Did that happen to you too? Control A, select everything, filters, shadows and glows, drop shadow. So that live preview, hit save if you're freezing up. Yeah, that vertical offset needs to come up a little bit because it's kind of, ooh, maybe I need to decrease my radius blur. Shadow type, outer, there's some options here too. You can try out. I think we're gonna have a problem all the way around. I don't think I can get that. Oh, how fun. Ooh, cool. Ooh, okay. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do about this shadow because it's like coming all the way to the edge of the box. Oh wow. Click and apply. And deselect. Oh, I hate those edges. That's yucky. All right, let's move on. Other filters. Inkscape has many different filters to choose from. Many of them work the same way that the drop shadow filter does, using a dialog box with number fields and a live preview option. When you use a filter that you haven't used before, it's important to experiment with the filter settings to get a better sense of what the filter does. When you experiment with a filter settings, be sure to use the live preview setting. If you apply a filter and don't like how it looks, you can either use the undo command or the remove filters command later. You can only use the undo command to remove a filter right after you've added it, but you can use the remove filters command to remove the filters from an object at any time. You'll learn how to use the remove filters command next. All right, let's go ahead and select our top image, and I'm going to close the drop shadow box. Let us find our fill and stroke down here at the bottom. Click on that. I have to save a couple hundred times before that will work for me. It's not going to. So if you have that issue ever with your RAM, just go into Object, Fill and Stroke, and it'll pop up for you. And do you want to change the color of that? Do you want to decrease the opacity of that a little bit? Increase the opacity? What would you like to do? This is your creation. Okay, and that's the fill. Would you like to add a stroke? Let's go ahead and add one. You just click this box right here to give it a solid stroke. And I can't see a stroke right now. It's too thin. So that's where you go into your stroke style. And you can increase it so that you can see a little better if you'd like to. And then you can go ahead and decide what color you want to make that stroke. That's pretty. Would you like to give it a pattern? Make sure that you have the fill box and click on the pattern tab. There you go. And you get a drop-down box. And that'll give you lots of really fun patterns to choose from. And you've got some blur settings on here that you can use. And you've got some opacity settings here that you can play around with. So knock yourself out That's nice. Save. Now, if you click on nodes, you can actually adjust the pattern direction. That's fun. So play around with that. That's pretty cool. Then grab your select tool. Okay, do you want to give it a filter effect? You could go up to a filter like blurs and play around and see what that does. Remember, you can hit Control-Z to undo your filter effect. And let's see. Let's try something else. Ooh, that's interesting. And remember, you can use that remove filters to get rid of filters too. Oh, I have to hit Control-Z. I don't like that. I'm going to hit Control-Z again and hit Control-Y and get it back to where I had it. There we go. So Control-Z does work still. Like, you can go back several steps with Control-Z. When I hit that remove filters, apparently, you know, that pattern that I had added had a filter effect. So I didn't want to get rid of that. All right, so you're just going to repeat that process for each of your, for each of your images. And, uh-oh. Okay, so here's something interesting that just happened to me. When I went to grab this, I thought, oh, I can probably move that. And it has a separate layer for that pattern. So I want to try, I don't know if I can select both if I hold down Shift. Yes, I can. I can select them both. And I'm going to do object group to group that pattern and the fish together so that I can actually move it around as one object. And remember, if you click twice with your selection and transform tool, it'll give you the rotate handles. And I'm making a video. I don't know if I'll be able to get it to work. I'm going to try. Okay, I got my rotate handles, so I could technically... Oh, wow. It is rotating the filter and it's not rotating my fish. I thought I grouped this. So I guess what I'm going to recommend that you do is before you put any patterns on your fish, let us grab those fish and resize them the way that we want to. And if we want to rotate them, we get those rotate handles just by clicking on that a second time. Rotate that. You could also flip them. Up here you have these nice transformation tools that you can use. You can also use your arrow keys to move an object that is selected up and down, and if you hold down Shift, it moves them quicker. So go ahead and get your fish moved around so that they're in a nice little school if you're doing fish. Remember, if you want to maintain proportions, what key do you hold down so that you're not skewing it? If you want to skew it, that's fine, you can. So that they're not all exactly the same. But if you want to maintain proportions, it's Control. Remember, Control controls things. So have fun with this. Resize them all. I'll be back when I'm done. Okay, what if you want, you know, remember to create depth, Smaller things are further in the distance. So if I want to make that look like it's behind the other fish, I can go up to Object, lower to bottom, and that will go behind. The other thing that I can do to give it more depth is decrease the opacity. So that'll make it look like it's a little further off in the distance if it's a little more blurry. And the larger something is, the more it's going to look like it's in the foreground, and it's going to need to be a little bit darker. So I'm going to go ahead and make this fish that's in my foreground a little darker, a little more close looking. But he's not going to look closer to me if there's a smaller fish in front of him, right? So let's go ahead and once again go to Object, and we'll raise this one to the top. That drop shadow is looking kind of silly back there. So I'm going to go to Filters, Shadows and Glows, and Drop Shadow. And I think I can do my live preview. I think I can change this to 0. Can I get rid of it that way, or do I get rid of it going down this way? Let's see. Okay, so if I want to get rid of the drop shadow, I figured I'm just going to have to remove the filter. So I can have a fish that doesn't have a drop shadow and make it look like it's closer. So make it so that it's not opaque at all. This will be my guy up in the foreground. These other guys are going to be in the background. I'm going to try a different shadows and glows filter on my fish to give him a little more detail. I really like that one. I might have to do that on another one too. Let's see. Filters, shadows. Cut out glow. Oops, doesn't look good on that one. And I think I'm going to try to make some seaweed, so I'm going to grab my Bezier tool, and I'm just going to create a little seaweed shape. Always have to click save before I hit my end button. Okay, great. Then I can take my nodes tool, oops, eeps, and bend some of those, give some curves to my seaweed. Still working on that a little bit. Having fun doing it. Loving the way I can manipulate my handles and make my seaweed look organic, irregular. It's very fun. Yours goes a lot faster than mine does, since you don't have to worry so much about getting your handles and everything dragged around. Yours pretty much does it one right after the other, whereas I have that situation where I have to click save every single time. Okay. There we go. There's my seaweed. I just need to give it some fill. So, gonna grab my fill and stroke object, fill and stroke, and give it some color. So, of course, seaweed has to be a green hue, right? A nice seaweed green. I think I like that with the purple. That's looking good. Okay, and then I'm going to try to possibly apply filter. It's got a stroke on it. I'm going to get rid of the stroke by clicking the X, and then I might go ahead and apply a filter, the shadows and glow. I might do a drop shadow on it to kind of match the other stuff. That can be cool. Give it the effect like there's a couple of other, I'm gonna have to close that. Do it again. Click save. Free up your RAM. Okay, filters, shadows, drop shadow. Okay, live preview. Yeah, so fun. That's cool. I like that. That's creating very cool background effect. And once again, I could change the color. The opacity on it. I'm going to click apply, and I think I want to get that moved to the back. So I'm gonna go file, save, grab my selection tool and go to object, and I'm gonna lower it. Okay, and so all of that is behind that fish, and let's see, do I want to lower it even more? Let's go ahead and object. Let's see what happens if I lower it again. And lower it again. Okay, so that's kind of fun. I think I'm gonna take that fish right there and I'm gonna lower him. So he's behind there, and then I can move him. I could have him so he's kind of peeking out back there. That's fun. So creating some layers. Ooh, loving that. Having fun with filters. That's definitely got to be behind the green part. So if it's in front of it, I feel like that drop shadow just doesn't work. So object, lower, there we go. That's better. Okay, and then this guy right here, I think I need to get rid of his drop shadow, so I'm going to filters, remove filters. I can kind of see through him a little bit, so I'm going to my object, fill in stroke, and I want to make sure that his fill has a higher opacity, so I'm not seeing through his body. And then I can add that other cool filter. What was that? The cutout glow? Oh, it just doesn't look good. I wonder why. I'm gonna hit Control Z because I'm not liking that one. I'm gonna try different. Let's try Emergence. That looks pretty decent. I like that one. Okay, so play around with your fish. Think this guy. Think about your composition. This fish is leading our eye off the page right now, so I'm going to flip him so that he is swimming into the scene and not out of it. If that makes sense. He might need to be a little smaller too, since he has that drop shadow and he's a little further off in the distance. So I might just go ahead and make him a little smaller so that he's back there in the background. Okay. All right. Could get rid of the drop shadow on that one. Let's see if I like that. And click that and go to filters and remove that drop shadow. And I might make him a little darker. Okay, and apply a filter to that fish. Cutout glow work on him? Yeah, cutout glow worked on him really well. Not sure why it wouldn't work on this fish so well. This fish back here in the background isn't doing anything. It's not serving a purpose. I need to do something with this guy. What should I do with him? I don't have a fish over here in this corner. see. Bring it back there. Remove his filters. Enlarge him a little bit, maybe. Increase his opacity a little bit. Give him another filter. Let's try the in and out. Ooh, that's fun. Might have to do in and out on another one. I like that one. Filter. Oh, that's fun. I like that. That gives that a really cool view. I might have to do it on this one too. Let's try it. You just don't know until you try it. Oh, that looks so cool! Yep, I found my new fishy filter. Let's see what happens when I do it on my largest one. Oh, don't think I like that. I'm gonna keep my subject, but I might try it on my seaweed. I was looking for a filter for my seaweed. See what happens when I do in and out on my seaweed. No, I don't like that. Control Z. Okay, let's try some textures. So, what about bark? That's interesting. Hit Control Z if you don't like it. What about blotting paper? Oh, that's kind of cool. Control Z if you're not liking it. You can, if you do more than one texture together, it's going to have both of those textures applied. So that's the reason why you got to hit Control Z. I'm looking for something that is more like seaweed. Oh my goodness, that's the tinted rainbow texture. That one was really fun. I'm going to hit Control Z and I'm going to try the warped rainbow. Okay, well, I think that goes great with my crazy hair day. So we could literally be here all day long, adding and taking away. Woo! Textures and filters. This is just a hoot. So I'll try watercolor. Whoops, disappeared. All right, get your design that you like. Make it look good, okay? Then you're gonna go File, Save. Click your cursor so that nothing is selected in your image, okay? And you're going to export. File, Export Ping Image. Make sure that it's in the right folder. Mine's not. I don't want mine exporting to my C folder. So I'm going to have to click Export As to make sure it goes to the right folder. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and get into my pictures where I have my digital arts folder. And I just made a variety folder that I'm saving this work in. Remember, first and last name, variety.png. We're exporting a ping. This is an image file. All right, so we haven't exported it yet. All I did was told it how it's going to be exported. I didn't just actually export it. This is where a lot of students will go around. They're like, okay, I'm done. And they close it down and they go to submit it and there's nothing there. Well, remember to click the close when complete. And if it doesn't work, save and free your RAM. Okay. This box will close when you've actually exported it. So click Export Now. Now it's exported. Now I can open up my files, go into my variety folder, and there is my ping. Let's see how it looks. Oh my goodness, it's actually coming right off the page. I can't say that I like that. Okay, I'm gonna see if I can figure out how to fix that. So I'm going to View, Zoom, And I'm just gonna zoom out a little bit because I'm gonna try to clip this off of the page. To do that, I'm going to grab my rectangle tool and I'm going to just draw a rectangle around my border. Then I am going to, let's see, I'm going to hit Control A, Control All. I don't know if this is going to work. We're going to find out. And we're going to go to Object, Clip, Set. Phew! It worked! Awesome! Save. Click my selection tool, click outside of it. Woohoo! There's my artwork. But guess what? Now I have to export it again. So save your final changes and then go File, Export Ping. This time you'll notice that it's saving in the right folder, and close when complete. Export. Click a save. If it stops, replace it. Yes. And now I can go to my folder, open that up, and boom. Hey, I really like that. It is swanky and it matches my hair. So I hope you had fun with this project.